Sairam and welcome once again Father Francis Kumeran to the studios of Radio Sai.
Vanakkam.
Since Christmas is around the corner, it would be nice if we can reflect on the story of the advent of Lord Jesus Christ. And one of the instances when you look at the Christmas story is as soon as Jesus is born, you have these three kings from the Orient, from the East, who come to see the Lord and offer these varieties of gifts. What is your perspective on this act of the divine drama?
Actually, the Indian in me gets very happy when we speak about that story because it has a very particularly Indian touch to it, that story. You see, firstly, I wish we never used the word three wise men. You know, it's a common word that everyone uses because firstly, the Bible doesn't say there were three of them. There were three gifts, but it could have been a whole group of them that had come, you know. And secondly, it doesn't say they were men. Mm-hmm. You know, we need to also beware of imposing a patriarchal, masculine view on the text. What the word is very interesting used in the Greek. It says magi. And when one starts to look into that word, one of the better interpretations for the word magi is actually astrologers. Mm-hmm. These were people who studied the stars. They studied the stars and looked for signs for the birth of this child. And then when they saw this one specific star, it indicated the birth of a great personality, an avatar. And they followed that message of the star to Bethlehem. Now, as you know, here in India, we have one of the most ancient systems of astrology, the Jyotish system. You know, and the and the nakshatrams, the study of these stars, has been an ancient discipline of India. So the trade routes from India to Palestine were well traveled in those days, in the time of Jesus. I will not be surprised if these wise, I'm saying it again, these wise men, but these astrologers, if these astrologers had come all the way from India, or if not from India, then they must have been influenced by the science of astrology that was long developed in India.
Yes.
You see? So immediately when I read the story of the Magi coming to Jesus, I see a reflection of my own Indian background over there and the wisdom of India manifesting. But also the gifts they bring are very interesting. They bring gold, they bring frankincense, and what's frankincense? Incense, you know, agrabatti.
Yes.
They bring agrabatti, and they bring myrrh, which was a bitter perfume used to embalm a body after death. Now, I remember in 2005 I was making a pilgrimage of South India, and I went to the Chidambaram temple. Mm-hmm. And when you enter the Chidambaram temple, the Vimana on the temple is made out of pure gold. And as you enter the temple, or any temple in India, you have the strong aroma of incense burning. Yes. There's a particular smell in temples that you can't get anywhere else. And in that moment, I thought, here's a civilization that worships God with gold and incense.
Yes.
You see? And so
I think nowhere else gods are adorned with so much gold and incense as it is in India.
Precisely, exactly. And so when I hear of these wise men bringing gold and incense to Jesus, I immediately picture, you know, Hindu priests carrying these gifts to the Lord, because it is a very Indian thing, a very Hindu thing, a very Eastern thing. And so the gifts themselves point to the possibility of these sages actually being yogic masters or astrologers, but men of high learning and of a high spiritual stature, that they would, make this long journey
beyond the ordinary.
Exactly. And so here these great sages come to Jerusalem in search of the child. They end up in Bethlehem, actually. And so when they end up in Bethlehem, they go to the king, because when you're looking for a great personality, you expect the personality to be born in the palace of the king. So naturally they go to the king's palace and they say, you know what, the stars we've been studying, according to our astrological readings, point that a great personality is born in this land, and he is royalty. And so the king, when he hears this, there's no baby that has been born in his palace, definitely not a son of his, and he's suddenly upset by this because his throne and his authority is being threatened. So he starts to inquire, who is this child, and so forth. And he actually says to these wise sages, to these astrologers, go and find this child so that I too may come and worship him. Mm-hmm. But his actual intention was to kill the child. Now, you would see the direct link with the Krishna story.
Absolutely.
You know, Jesus is born in the stable, a place where you last expect God to be born, you know, with a smelly stable with animals in it. Krishna is born in a prison. In a prison. And when Krishna is born, Kamsa wants to kill him. You know, because the prophecy says that the child that will come forth from this womb will defeat you.
Yes.
So Herod also is troubled by this. So there's a universal element to the story, because we see it recurring in the birth of great personalities. And the deeper message there is that when God's power starts to manifest, it upsets the false powers that we have been used to. It upsets the things that give us a false sense of security. So it happens on a personal level. When I experience God, all the things that I took security in, all the things that gave me identity and power, suddenly those things start to shake. They start to show up as an illusion, as part of Maya. And it's unsettling. And that's what happens to Herod. It's unsettling that these wise astrologers have come looking for a great king that is being born in this land. And so they continue to follow the star, and they end up at the stable in Bethlehem, where Mary and Joseph are with the baby Jesus. And so the great king of the universe is born as a humble baby in the stable. And there they offer these gifts of gold, myrrh, frankincense, incense, and myrrh. And when I read the story and I reflect on these gifts that they offer, I ask myself every Christmas, what is the gold that you have to offer to the Lord? You know, what is the frankincense? What is the myrrh that you have to offer the Lord? And I think the gold that we have to offer is a heart overflowing with bhakti. That's the gold that God seeks from us.
The heart of gold.
The heart of gold, exactly. You know, Krishna says in Gita, offer me just a leaf.
Yes.
Just a leaf. But if that leaf is offered with absolute bhakti, it is most pleasing to me. And this is the true gold that must be offered to God, is a heart overflowing with devotion and love. And so Christmas is a wonderful time to examine our heart and say, you know, what is this offering that we are making to God? The incense, you know, the incense is always flowing upwards. Incense never flows downwards. It's always moving upwards. And I think incense is a call to rise to higher consciousness. It's a call to go beyond. It's a call to be lost in the mystery of God. Yes. This is the invitation. And that's why in the temples and in churches like the Anglican Church, which I belong to, and the Catholic Church, we often use a lot of incense in our worship, because it reminds us of the mystery of God that we are being invited to, and we are being called to rise into it. Now the third gift, which I didn't speak about earlier on, myrrh, which was used to embalm a body after death, symbolized death. And you see, when we're on the path of devotion and this path of jnana, rising to higher consciousness, what must happen is the offering of myrrh must take place. A death needs to take place, and it is the death of the ego.
The death of the body consciousness.
Exactly, exactly. The thought that I am just this body, I am just the mind. There needs to be a death of the ego and an identifying with Christ consciousness. So these three gifts that they offer hold within themselves the possibility of great symbols of truth and point us to the God path, so that we too can follow the star of God's signs in our life to the stable of Bethlehem and find the stable within us, and within us find the Christ child.
Wow, wonderful. In fact, as you were narrating about the fragrance, the other beautiful interpretation of fragrance that I always like when I look at the agarbatti is the agarbatti burns itself
Exactly.
only to give fragrance to others.
Absolutely.
It diminishes itself.
Yes.
And ultimately it is reduced to nothing.
Yeah.
But it has done great service to everything around.
Exactly.
And I think that is what Christ did.
Yeah.
He just gave up himself completely, just only to spread the fragrance of love.
Yeah.
And that is another very beautiful and powerful symbolic significance of the fragrance.
Well, that's the message of the cross. Jesus
Cross.
dying on the cross. It's
Yes.
absolute surrender to God and absolute giving of himself, as a reminder that God doesn't give in half measures to us. He always gives fully and completely. We say in that mantra, Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamodachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Fullness here, fullness there. Out of fullness, fullness is coming. But that source of fullness never gets empty.
Yes. When you take out the full from the full, it is still full.
Yeah, so that's God. He's completely giving himself to us. And the only response to that sort of love is to give myself completely back to him. This is the invitation of Jesus in his birth and in his dying, that we may share in his resurrection, which is the awakening to the fullness of life that is available to every human being who treads the God path.